남준의 시즌의 구로 주의자 심지어 탐지가 돈도 탐자라나 맞춰봐 산재의 고마를 뭐지 진짜 토바자 뒤에도 안배 장주세가 랍잖아 취시는 양소를 나와래 신고를 신발을 퇴고를 퇴발을 퇴제쇼 만호 가지고도 안 가서 봐봐 되는 게서 좀 보시와래 집에 은주주고 때문에 제시 준비하신 얘기 있어도 어떻게 공부하자.
And so, as we normally do, we begin by setting our motivation, and that motivation is one to do whatever we possibly can to attain the peerless state of enlightenment in order to benefit all living beings. And to do that, of course, to attain such a state, we need to perfect all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. To perfect those trainings, in turn, we need to have a very good understanding of what they are and then put them into practice. So in order to gain that understanding, we need to be able to rely on a non-mistaken source of this information. And thus it is that this morning we'll hear a brief explanation on a section of the text known as the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by the great master Shantideva. And so then also, as we normally do, we employ the technique of taking the results onto the path of visualization. And so we visualize in the space in front of us, in actuality, our own Guru in aspect, that of Shakyamuni Buddha, who has one face and two hands, and his right hand is in the earth-touching mudra, and the left hand is in the meditative equipoise mudra, holding an alms bowl filled with nectar. He is in the nature of pure, clear light. He is skilled in means and greatly compassionate. And we actually have the certainty that the Buddha is actually there, present in front of us. Again, likewise, we visualize in a space all around us, all kind, mother, sentient beings. We can begin with our parents and then the close relatives and friends, those who are neutral to us, and those who we feel are more distant towards. We make sure that they are prominent in our visualization also.
rangi duela setabe and tubia omboti and jiwo on jamba toga hongs ig sumchi setup toga hole wese padu meba dune and choju singlam jan nebe ishiba nam and tuba sanja jumde nabal chanta and only onko and chilama chezo never mijuba ujan de bachi.
And then bringing our attention back to the central figure we are visualizing, we notice the at the crown, the a at the throat, and the hum syllable at the heart, from which emanates light rays going out into the pure realms, inviting all of the wisdom beings and empowering deities from their natural abodes the wisdom beings come and dissolve into the central figure, and the empowering deities confer the nectar of empowerment, some of which overflows at the crown, spontaneously producing the figure of Akshobhya.
어디랬죠? 아니 지금 덤베게다 저 구송투기 연대한테 시백하네 닦아져 들어왔다 저기 뭐다 구송투기 연대 되게 삼로다 구이 연대 숨이 연대 투기 연대 틀레가 연대 아니 다가니자 라지바 탐제를 된 저와 현지과의 저와 탈이 저와 굴러 투제지 뭐 일을 매고 주바 팬다 마다가 탐제가 된 제가 다가져 덤베게 연대 되게 되네 그러다가져 덤베게 연대 되게 받잖아 아니 가서라 다가져 지금 지금 가서라다 다외다와 이식이 때와 문득이 때와 어때네 지금 간투도 공부시 안 다가니셔 랑게 탈거도 왜 심제 탐제자 탐대다 탐제자 대화도 제 동네 미도봐 대화도 자 대외풍 미도봐 동네를 대 동네에 찍기라 찍투리 용되겠지 딱그 토스잖아요 원나면 봐도 커네 동네 노tuk 어디 공부시는 아니 근데 그래서 심제를 미베 닝제 아니 근데 랑게도나 세데베 라마 투베옹벌 미베 아니 대바 아니 저 가서 딱간제 근데 지금 딱간제 투베옹보 딱간제 저 심제 탐제 동네를 전화 치모를 저와 주제 저와 쇼치 저와 다게 지금 대화도 대외 주다 담아지 된 제다 전화 치모를 담아 주제 담아 쇼치 담아 다게 지금 대다 전화 라마 투베옹보 챙길 납도 수스 아니 다 근데 동네의 대화 대화 지가도도 아니 제마도 봤어요. 아니 근데 제도에 누가도 술도 쓰다 아니 탐제라 투지신 뭘 들어 고마 들리시냐네 제도도 때문에 제도도 문도 쓰다 제도 아니 라마 투병도 고마 두배 딱가처럼 그래 딱가제 라마도 쿠베하고 고마마도 탐마도 사네 아니 그 고마데 그좀 되겠다 로케네 그러다 딱가제 데리 가서도 자주고 쓰면 근데 주마 춘제는 삼다 어때지
So focusing on the figure of the Buddha, and then we start to reflect on the amazing qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind, the Buddha's skillful means. We understand that the enlightened mind has the quality of having no fear of suffering from their own side, that they have also the no fear of really working in order to bring to enlightenment all other sentient beings. They work with great compassion without any bias at all, and they work for the benefit of others, even without thinking of any payback, say, whether there's any benefit in it for them or not. So they're completely neutral in that respect. And just having this appreciation for these kinds of qualities of an enlightened being, we generate the triple faith of the pure faith, the manifest faith, and the faith of conviction. And that when we think about all sentient beings, as looking at centering on all the sentient beings all around us, we understand that they have this not just a desire for, but a right to being free from suffering and the causes of suffering, and really free and having right to happiness and the causes of happiness. But on the one hand, they are bereft of that happiness, and they're inundated with suffering, which comes like one after the other. And whether it's if I've always been experiencing this from the peak of cyclic existence down to the hell without respite. And so a sense of compassion arises for those sentient beings and that suffering. And that and from that, we have the faith that the Guru Buddha can help in that respect. And we think how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May that be the case. I will see that it is the case. O Guru Buddha, please bless me to be able to make this so or work towards that goal. And how wonderful if all sentient beings had happiness and the causes of happiness. May that be the case. I will see to it that it is so. O Guru Buddha, please bless me to make it so. And that I realized that the desire, the aspiration to to do this. It's kind of like a very massive goal to try to attain. And let's say I realize that I'm not in that situation at the moment. I'm not capable of maybe even doing this for one sentient being. But if I ask the question, who can? Then I realize it's the enlightened state. And from that state, one has the capacity to work really efficiently for the benefit of sentient beings. And that I must be able to attain that state as well. It's very, very important that, to have that general state of mind of the enlightened aspiration to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so I make my commitment to generate the mind of enlightenment as much as I possibly can. Sokchang di trukju re ni ni wogi chik di somba tena membe chok nomba songda tukla.
Tubala and the Takanja de Chobala Choba Shegore. Chobata, Casade, Chobala Lacoduta, Chesopa, Takaja, Chesopacha to do a Mobishi La Cuyorba, Chajuk Semjane, and Chesopacha to Mobishi La Cuyore, until Labala Shegore, Shebala Tokore, and it each other. Because that maybe is something what it is dead, what it
And then setting our motivation, just adjusting our motivation to listen to what follows. We understand that such an aspiration as the attaining of enlightenment begins with the generation of the mind of enlightenment. It then follows that we must establish that firmly in our mind and back it up with our behaviors, our activities, which center on the 6 perfections and the 4 ways of accumulating disciples. And so we have to understand what they are about to begin with, and then to push forward to really try and do everything we can with that mind of enlightenment motivation. And so it is that we set our motivation to listen to how to go about this in the context of this text.
Digba chen chibayina ta peja toma me digba sa cedile padu me basa kasna ran sebu shon sen yo mo be shon de tuna ta chik kasora ta chik digba sa ile jongo joson kuita ko chante ke gyo duwele jongo joson de za masa ke tende kapje to ta digba padu me basa ta chobaro tende za digba de da ma do ba chen chibayina ta peja nyaso le ke ba ta chos nyaso le ke ba yina ani ko ta ka je je le je demo ba chen ta ka je 추주에 다 섬다래 치코유자네 섬다래 랑가 삼로 당당겠다 삼六내적에다는 가버려 다 근데 이바인도 아니 뒤에 싸바테는 님부터 없이 거나다 디바 다다다 다 초도 좀 님부터 없이 거나다 다 지르잖아 님부터 없이 거나다 다 그래서 그래서 다다 디다 대시 죄시 버리 근데 이제 가서 잠대 쉬바이나 다 소바텔라 소바데나 멤버 초도 다 덤베 송다 두글 봤다 근데 지금도 멤버 나네 다 그서데 다 멤버 초스도 다 그 멤버를 빼자잖아 와다 멤버를 다 그저 내 나자 아니 가서 세다 지금 소설 지금 루그 나자다 어떻게 요나 세그 멤버 냠묘에게 비다부를 땡고요 다 되는데 제가 다 간제 나라도 너무 도서 사벨 내년 받아 너무 도서 되게 봐 대이 내들에 타와데 다 멤버 초 아니 덤베 송다라 아니 두 고그래 두 리그레스 어디서 다 리반네스 자월렘 달라 멤버 탐제제 송호 탐제 진바지 까다 미제 선반에 신도 데모 매베네
So with regard to the root text, we had been examining the state of negativities and the degree to which we have accumulated countless negativities since beginning this time. We've looked at how we are very much kind of like under the cosh with regard to the control that our mental afflictions have over us and how we're kind of inevitably engaged in negativity time and time again. And this also really shows us the degree to which our minds are conditioned in this way, like such that if we have a negative intention, we can carry it out from the beginning, the middle, and the end through the motivation to do it, the action to go along with it, and even the kind of like rejoicing at the end of it, quite efficiently with great force. But when we come to doing a virtue, it's very hard to get the motivation, the actual virtue, and the dedication in line, and to do them very efficiently. And so it gives you a kind of an insight into what is really prevalent in your thinking, in what more easily comes to mind, and that's a negativity. And so there's a great sort of necessity to act quickly, because if we kind of have this kind of a tendency in our mind, then we're going to end up in the lower realms, because we've got all this negativity on our mind streams. And once in the lower realms, then we can see how much our hands are tied, that we will probably engage in more negativity there, laying down more causes. And also it's extremely difficult to get any kind of logical thinking happening. And so to see how we can try and engage in some sort of virtuous activity in a state like that, because we're so overwhelmed by the suffering of pain and want and so on. And so here it's so important then that we can not only change our attitudes, but also deal with our negativities. And so we're given a very precise instruction on how to use the 4 opponent powers when confessing and purifying negativities. This explanation is very, very important. And we've come to a point here in the text where the outline talks about a third point, about the supreme medicine being that speech of the teacher. And therefore, it is absolutely appropriate that we should establish this in our lives, integrate this into our lives and into our thinking. And this is to follow the example of the doctor as well, where we just talked about the mundane sense of a physician who is there to gain a prognosis of what's wrong with us, and then to recommend a mental health plan for us to get over our physical diseases, our physical ailments, and so on. And but here it's talking about something far more serious, so that we have the disease of mental affliction, and that's producing negativities in our mind streams. And so we need the supreme medical practitioner, the supreme physician, and to make sure that we follow perfectly that advice. And so verse number 56 says, then the intention not to act in accordance with the advice of the all-knowing physicians that can uproot every misery is extremely bewildered and worthy of scorn.
동행 두고 요 말에 다 된데 임바 인자 다 가르고 그러스나 다 배나 동행게 주사요나 아니 제부 마민 거네 동행 이때 마요 얘기 다 답시 제고 요래 아니 동행게 주사 매바 이나 아니 마사바데 아니 donde 마사바데 ngo트베 되네 아니 사도 마사웨 답시 제고 요래 아니 다 된데게 답시 제가라 된데게 나랑 조금 신기 요 말에 다 신기한 게 냠눈쟁 게 아니 딱 가서 대 기부지가 된 것도 다 된데 냠눈쟁 게 기부대 다 가서 다 간자제 가서라 다 간자제 좀 차대요래 좀 받대 당분에 지금 상계 제가 되는 많이 받잖아 알아서 내신제 레드 녀몽의 상황도 주게 아니 아니 감숨라 아니 코아 되게 아니 된데 지금 아니 다 간자 지금 된데 지금 아니 녀몽의 코스디 아니 신에 다 간자 랑기 계획 신이라 때네 아니 신에 못트네 아니 디 아니 친지 몰로베 람라랍네 아니 제 나사베 알레니 바티게디 바타 아니 레사도 마사베게 아니 주티가라 랍네 아니 다 아니 가서데 랍네 아니 타 아니 Saju Lama Rimgi, Turner, and that gets a Dama Sumla Soba, the Sosa, Tipchan Chen, and Tar Moba to Sanki of Imbadi. That in the Sanki again, Kong Dita, Tita, Lamdel Lana Meba Chate, Dick Konata, Lam Tingi Meba, Lana Meba, Chate, and Tendenza, Tangaran together, Nomo Dusum and Nawa, Nomo Dusum, Tikunelani, and Tungela Subanoet, Noeg, and Sawa. Rota Nomongi net de la Sawan never chito, that Sawanem, the Mayoa, Sato Masaya, Nasaba the Tawachi, Tenecheto, that Dilla Pa New Di Kuga Pa Chome Chito, that's all I think is a Tendege Tabjala Tuji Chumba the Dembele, Member, Tamje Kimba, Tamje Kimba, Nomunga Sungu Tamje Nomu, Tamje Gotsunia, Tamje Jimbal Seve, something, Sawan Member Soke, Jimbal Seve. And what I did to them were tea, that the names that tea got a michever, that tea, and a Lamden now, 2 7 called a Lamden now, got a michever, and a Majabachan, and they want to go there, and it that to make Gulapa Guchin. That to make you gentle to Debaina, somebody, Shindo Timo, but that wouldn't done again. Timo, she wanted to at the top. The Chateauras, Timugi, Shindo. Timugo, she Rala Mevenesu, Genes, that so Munetana, so to Tongu Jessa, Junju Jessa Sological, more to a genum. And that Carriagos, don't be a cutter to what I was starting. Then you might say, what to me doing this set up and a lamp temper and a lamp temper to be a cutter and to what I would rest. To what I was about.
So, yes. So this verse is discussing, that we need to kind of understand where our negativities are coming from, and indeed the whole cause and effect setup, and that here, from the point of view of of doing that, we need to gain that explanation, and so this is the situation whereby it's very clear to us that although we have these mental afflictions on our mind stream and we're accumulating negative karma, at the same time we all want happiness and we don't want suffering, but we seem to be kind of like not unable to be able to create the causes for the one and to abandon the causes for the other. And so we're kind of in a state of ignorance. And so if we don't want to experience these kinds of negative results, we need to know what it is to do, to be able to do about that. And likewise, we need to know how to avoid collecting newly all these causes for negativity. And so here we have such an expert who is the ultimate physician, who knows from their own experience, and so it's like, and this was gained in a very authentic way. The fact that the Buddha was not enlightened from the outset, but was just like us, under the influence of karma and the mental afflictions, but and having kind of had to experience suffering, the various degenerations of going around in cyclic existence again and again and again. But he came to knowledge, by first of all relying on another spiritual teacher and kind of like doing that in an excellent way, and then by coming to know the reality of his situation and coming to understand that, then really training on the path and understanding how one can really concentrate on accumulating virtue to bring about happiness and to avoid negativity, as well as purifying that negativity in order to avoid suffering. And ultimately he became this person who attained a state of enlightenment, having as I said, amassed the two collections the collection of merit on the one hand, and the collection of wisdom on the other, having purified all negativity and accumulated all positive merit. And so this is the person who is qualified, then, who actually understands from their own experience what it is that we need to know. And so they are the spiritual teacher that we should really rely on. And it's kind of saying here that they, although peerless in their understanding and peerless in their authority to be able to give that, it's like really not following the supreme or the ultimate all-knowing physician's advice, even when they have given the kind of advice that we need to uproot all of the mental afflictions completely. But it's saying we don't follow that advice, and we just talk about creating the causes for suffering again and again and again. It's like the ultimate in idiocy. It's kind of like extremely ignorant, and as it says here, worthy of scorn. It's kind of like having the answer in front of you and you're just turning your back and not doing anything about it. And so here we should actually make sure that we have the common sense to follow the path as is outlined by the Buddha, who has gone through it himself and understands exactly how it should be taught.
당 말아도 저번에 가서 뭐서 지다 출래 대화 요다 근데 배 가서는 자자 자다마 이치 띵는 이바지 매바 인사는 거서 지금 가서 자와 계신 레로다 된들 쇼고도 된들 쇼주다 저 앞에는 가라도 세대 내가 팬도하지 마 이나야 아니 지금 조선 가서 땅고 주나 조선 따는 거서 대 줍답 지기로 와 땅고 때도 되게 용해 때도 동에 매바 지금 절대로 조선 땅고 요 말에 조선 가야 요말 다 소소 삼로고 돈에 아니 줍투바 제 배전직 제도가 있나 셴 수이나 줍투지 우유 요매 계자 요 말에 가야만 나라조 소소가 삼로 못트는 지금 줍고 있나 줍투에지로 와. 다 예수 가셔 어제 체득이 내당 가셔까지 개체부 시험에 게 되들래 아니 가서다 다 조선 다에 매나 줍바도 같은 망부 요구도 다다데 최 줍세데 딕바방 겨워 줍세데 규축부 이미 깨자면 도와. 루아 미리 깨자면 도와. 이제 다 가리 교연 잡아서나 딱 몸하죠 봐. 몽배 온게 몸하죠 봐. 아니 지금 가서데 띵ning 예바 많이 봐. 다 되지 교연에도 와. 띵 뭐지 저 찍잖아. 다들 림바짜고 말해 가야 치고 말해. 아니 덤베게 때 샤바티게 된 거죠. 다지가 인다면되게 제바체 아니 소소고 녀바녀서는 아니 그 줍수나 조선 가야 매겐저 왔다 조선 가야 매베 토네 대화 탐제대 담바 동에 탐제대 저와 제도도 다 딜라 싸체서 가리요래 그러면 다 된대저 삼로다도 알아서 문에 전에 몽바래도 와 그래도 다 되게 알아서 못트에 개체 뭐래도 와 모두 개체 쳐버 듣고 몽보 시고를 때 문에 전에 뭐배 생활도 좀 대대고 요래.
So we have to question ourselves as to why we aren't as committed as we should be when the evidence and the correctness of the path is there in front of us. It's like here it's not possible for us to be able to commit ourselves 100%. It's a lack of faith. It's a lack of conviction. It's deep down in our system. It's kind of still we have this this kind of like a sense of a kind of a laziness around the Dharma that pushes into kind of more negative activities, or kind of establishing kind of these kind of like goals for this life only, and commit lots of expenses to doing that, and engage in lots of negativities in the accomplishing of that. And it seems there is where the bulk of our commitment is and effort goes. And it's kind of like here, when on the alternative, you can talk about an expense-free path where all you have to do is work on your own mind, that is capable of producing you every happiness and really ridding you of every suffering. And still, we don't place enough importance on that. We still have too much importance on the gathering of money and so on. And whereas to accomplish the Dharma, it doesn't matter whether you have money or not. You don't need to be rich to practice the Dharma well. That's obvious. And so we ought to be careful that we don't make this a kind of an inherent sort of fault in us, where we have this deep down absence of enough conviction to really start transforming our minds, and that we need to really kind of reflect and analyze in our own minds as to, really gain that sense of absolute conviction, to go for the path that is saying to us and based on experience that we can establish all happiness for ourselves and eliminate all suffering.
what the day to the any to Tosa to Janche, the what the day to the Takaja to be cut to Yoyake, and Kaso de Takaja to Yoyake, and Chikaso to the Pachanta with the Chia that to the Chetolata, Yakuyorba, the Motukasa, Chikaso de Casa the Tambucho Majewe King, Chewa in a chill Lamdo Mason, and chill. 두가제 와이네 야 바제 먹고 용 다디가 가도 소사 집장 손도 되는 제고도 아니 와다지 가서 이거도 제고 다 개체 못해도 와 어떻게 저
And so then, as it says here, that this kind of attitude of avoiding the path is kind of extremely bewildered and worthy of scorn. Therefore, we should put that kind of idiotic attitude aside and really try to accomplish the teachings of the teacher of the Buddha. It's very, very important for us, and that is to really set ourselves to establish two collections of merit and wisdom, and to eradicate all obscurations, and that we can employ the descending nectar light meditation in this context as well, and that to really kind of help us to kind of go. We need to. Now that there was a time when we didn't have any access or knowledge of the Dharma, but now that we have, and we need to fully commit, because there are many obstacles, and we can use this kind of meditation to kind of eradicate these obstacles, these mental attitude obstacles in our own minds.
배 장고바 때문에 자와래 양사 탑에 충원래야 바위에 내봐 자고나 바자 돈도 농아에 유리 양사 매치고요.
The next outline is explaining the example of a cliff, and so it says, the verse number 57 says, "If I need to be careful near a small ordinary precipice, then how much more so near the one of long duration that drops for thousands of kilometers."
어디다 랑게 아니 지금 세디 양라 잡라 내봐 주에 양사 탐에 충을라야 홍도게 다지로 양게 양라 견제마 양나 그 치치 제반에 세디 소디 체도면도 체라는 체라보도 내줘야 돼 요마르와 개반에 개반보도 내줘야 요마르와 그 같이 내봐 있네 아니 세디 양라를 견제 양나 다 타마들 세디 아니 다 내가 찾겠지. 딜레하가 뇌치야지 개요 말아. 다 그래서 되게 저 가서는 놈몸베게 내바티게 다 아니 되게 레 녀바사에 뒤 동에다 딱 가져다 아니 지금 딱 가져다 차라는 봐도 뇌줘야 주고도 봐. 또 하는 것에서 다디 아니 저 박세만 보자에 들어왔다. 아니 그래서 못하면 발 깨줘야 되는 거요 봐. 어쨌든 아니 양라 잡녀바 주에 양사 탐에 충을 나야 아니 뭐들 홍르가 똑같지네 아니 딜라 삽삽지기로 왔어 삽삽지기로 왔어 홍도내서 바위를 내버렸다 바위가 되네 지그와 내버 잡고 그요나 딱 박사 동자만보다 년송 못하면 봐 홍태 야나 사람네 사람보다는 가서다 코알로다 코알 딱가저 년송의 내줘야다 아니 년송 주주게 다가내신 그 년송 탄에 이와이나야 안 데리게 완전반이야 디 아니 영화 준대다 다대다 데 양종 년송 못하면 봐 게도 다가자 코아데는 마타가 봐도 다 모두는 동네 요대 정도 봐 되네서 박사 동동 후에 야외 양산 후에서龙阿姨，那是两位龙阿姨，顶龙呢，两位养生龙阿姨，也顶在顶这个龙呢，顶这个龙阿姨嘛呢，有人不那个边是的，人说叫有人不养生朋友吧，加个是的，顶这人上顶这个养的了，人说没他们把接住养的了，朋友吧加个吧，没去过，但得羡慕我这玩意。是吧？但是我那这个给吃啥的了，当然没就把这给冲啥的食物给全部这个要的，因那样给全部的这个了，地雷给吃完的，到木头的年送了没给的，木头的夸了嘛，可以动个羊毛所以的给全部的话是没有了，对
的。So this is really a verse describing what should the priorities of what we should really consider as important to focus on. And so it's here saying that if we are in an area where it's possible to fall down a small incline where you might sprain or break a limb, we're still going to be extremely careful about that. And so we kind of like that's common sense, but we rarely focus on that which is far more dangerous and a very, very huge precipice of thousands of kilometers that we might fall down into the lower realms. And not only that, but once down there, we might have to remain there for a long, long time. If such such a cliff, we're around such a cliff or a precipice, it goes without saying that we should be extremely careful and mindful. And so this is saying here that that the kind of the negativities that we have on our mind stream can be carried from eon to eon and harming us again and again and again, and that repeated again and again and again. And so it's kind of like here we arrived in this life, and we should really concentrate on having this amazing opportunity where we can actually put a stop to that sort of constant revolution of negativity and to eradicate that negativity. And so we can see how harmful mental affliction can be as well, that through that negative karmas, we are led from life to life to life into these negative states. And remember, like, the hell realms, this like descriptions are of unbearable suffering for an unbearable length of time. And even should we free ourselves from the karma therein, we still have the neighboring hells to deal with and the occasional hells to deal with. And so it's important for us to get our focus right, to take our focus off of that which is really insignificant, and to maintain our focus on what is absolutely crucial for us, that we need to focus on the purification of these negativities that might really make for a long-lasting suffering for us.
다들 가서 지난 가서 도나 지구열 소소로 마녀 탑시 지구열 봐 이래 가서 장하는 것이라 통을 매봐 인자 뒤져 봐. 단 내가 그때가 소소 별로 저기 삽삽 맞잖아 마 라바 차그래 강바 차그래 곧다 그래 삽삽 때 뭐도 셰두고 열 봐. 다 셰바도 뭐도 셰고 열 봐. 다 마셰바데 셰바 소에데 개침 버 봐. 셰바 소에데 아니 좀 살라 삼로 땅네 셰바 소도에데 다 개침 버 봐. 그러와 개점으로 다디 하고에 돈에 아니 디시아바 이마이나 아니 오늘 전에 저기 년송 개 주제 사이라 좀 장다 맞는 탑매겐치 아니 사도 아니 마사웨게 탑시지 맞잖아 탑메게 지마 인자 아니 그 용토로 와 용토로 와 왔다 디체도 숨고 와 왔다데
And so yes, this verse is really emphasizing how we of course have a certain amount of care about where we're going, what we're doing to avoid momentary hurt or injury or even inconvenience. But it's saying here that we need to also be able to look far ahead and to kind of really realize that we need to of what we really need to be careful about. And it's saying here that if we're uninformed about that, we need to inform ourselves. We need to become aware, and that to understand that the chronic kind of danger that we are in, that should we die with these negativities on our mind stream, we're headed to the lower realms. And once there, it's really too late. That you can't do anything about your situation in when you're there. There's no means to really rectify that situation in any quick way. And so here it's saying, get our priorities right, and to really make sure that we are doing the right thing. We are focused and mindful on that which is most important.
다 된대 지요 이런 다 가르쳐서 니바 뉴도 베버리발라 니시다 니바 뉴도 베버리발라 니시 디리니네 사 디베니부 템발라 베버차와 디베니부 템발라 베버차와 나 동행계에서 미치발라 좀세 지야메베서 람콤바 라 레로 자미리바 오쳤다 sab제니체
And so then following that is that which reinforces that very point. In it's saying the second here is how it is appropriate to really strive with some hurry, with some kind of like kind of quickly engage in that kind of effort, not to be putting it off. And this is further elucidated with 2 points. It says it's actually, we really need to start making an effort to apply the antidote to negativities from today on, from right now. And the second is that there's absolutely no reasoning behind a kind of fearlessness in relation to negativity and suffering, and it is appropriate to really not tolerate any laziness when it comes to applying the path.
다 당보들 가서라 당보다 다 드리니네 디베님부 때말아 배버 차와서 다 드리니 단단해 그러다 드리 단단해 아니 다 대시 가서 대보님부 때말아 배버 차와네 드리 코나 미지셰 대화도 봐 리마이 다니 매버 주에 되는 되미사와 중심.
The first of these then, how it is important for us to apply the antidote to negativities right now from here on in. Verse number 58 states, it is inappropriate to enjoy myself thinking that today alone I shall not die, for inevitably the time will come when I shall become nothing.
다들 다 가자 치와냐 봐 남친님의 치외지 치 뭐도 간지자 미편 봤었다 어들 다들 인자 다 고치게 드린 코나 미치시에 미치시 다 드린 지금 말해서 미치시 대화두배 론네 봐 리바 마인데 왔다 되는데 아니 고치게 좀 전에 막 괜찮고 봤어 리바 마인데 드린 랑야 미치베 이든 매매 다 드르랑야 마치베 이든 요마레스 이든 요마레 니바 요마레 다니 신네 매바 주에 뒤되네 다 소저 신네 니마치 매바 차에 뒤중에 뒤되네 상패제 되미사와 섬다 다 간제 지금 산이 편제 되미사와지 용거로 딱 니바도 용거로 마용아지 용마야 그래서 다 상패제 되미사와 주에 레로 미자와서 간제 레로 마자와 치쇼 마자와 쳤나 다 제일 수파 샤마 샤와자 미샤와 디리니네 자 디베니 못담을 배워 저거 다 디리니네 단단해 다 디베니 못담을 배워 치고레스 다 디린세도 단단해 쓰고라 단단해 쓰고라
And so here, in the context of the fact that death is definite, the time of death indefinite, and that only our spiritual practice will be of benefit to us at that time of death. It's saying here that we have the somebody with the attitude of saying, "Oh well, you know, I'm not going to die today, so I can take it easy and be satisfied." And it's saying here that this kind of laziness is completely inappropriate. Because one, there is no guarantee that you won't die today, and that you know, when you die, you know, that's it. You become nothing, and you know that is inevitable. You know, whether it's today or tomorrow, you are inevitably going to reach that stage of death. So you have to get over this laziness of procrastination, of putting it off. Oh, later, I'll get into it, and so on. But now it's time to, from this, not just this day, but from this moment on, we have to start applying the antidotes to our negativities.
어디로 가지 달 다다스데 소소라 발레 다 가지데 베나 로타 다다스데 소소 야바요 다 가지 마음바스데 아니 소소라 발 매트리스도 먼저 산이 파절 차지들 동원 관다 파절 차지들 소소라 발 매트리스도 다다데 소소라 발 유에트리스도 다 되면서 단단해 아니 고서 레로 맞아져 디베니 못해 발 배치고 그랬어 지고 그랬어 다다도 소소라고 요래 아니 다대 제일 소소라고 요 말와 소소라고 요 말이야 아니 치원이 다 남지 못도 용에 다 줘버려 다도 용에 다 줘서도 다 소소라고 요바데 가리서 소소라고 요바데 다다들도 다다도 소소라고도 이 저마도 소소라고 민도 어디에 잡다가 뭐노와 쟤네 아니 가서 디베 니부터 말 배주지고 그래서 가서 디바디 소소를 내고 요와 디바디랑 팜바지고 요 디바스 팜베 되어와 동어라베 되어와 팜바지고 요바 인자 팜바도 고구면 도와
So the important thing to take from here is that, you know, now we still have our fate in our hands, so to speak. That in the future we may not be able to say that. Even tomorrow we may not be able to say that. So it's not a question of life and death even. It's a question of being able to have the mental capacity to do something about our situation. And so here, now is the time. Don't put it off anymore. We know that death is definite, that it will come at some time. But now we can say, at least now it's in our hands, we can do something about it. So we need to make the unmistaken choice here, and to understand that, you know, we can't really abide in negativity and mental affliction. That there's only fault in that. There's only affliction in that. There's only loss in that. And we certainly don't want to experience loss. So we need to actually start applying the antidotes to our negativities from now on.
그러나 거기서 니말아 잡으나 카산다 디린다 산이시로 카산데 대사래 양조요에 요 말이야 아니 디린데 다다다 소설라바 요트다 산이데 소설라바 요 말이야 다다다 저 관다 잡아 있네 그러 다다도 소설라바 요래 관다도 소설라바 요 말이야 안 다른 쇼가 가고 된 대사래 뭐도 다다는 요트와 다다들도 단다들 지금 제 마도나 제가 지금서디 소설라고 유명해 다 태솜으로 다 되게 지금 가서 먼저 어다 제가 저 먼저 단지로 와 시그리면서 시그리에서 그래 이내야 아니 디네 시그 말에 선이 시그 말 인데 저 단지 온걸 하되기도 아니 디 온게 아니 라를 좀 쳐보자 하다 어다 되게 가서라 다 반자 저 캡산데 그 캡산 레데 뒤줄 레토가 지고다 뒤줄들 레마도나 뒤줄 라발 쇼나 아니 소소 라발 민도가 어디래
So this is an important point here, and that we have the kind of the way of improving our situation in our hands now. Yesterday is gone. Today is here now. Tomorrow is not in our hands. We don't know what it's going to be like. And now is the only time we have any control over it. Even this evening is uncertain as to whether we'll have this kind of control. And early morning is gone, is past. And so this is the important point. We cannot keep putting things off to later. It's always very doubtful whether there will be a later for us or whether we'll have any control later. So it's this is called grasping at permanence. This thing of, oh, I won't die today, therefore I can take it easy and procrastinate. This is grasping at permanence. It's really kind of saying that you really deep down don't have an understanding of impermanence. And it's kind of saying here we have to understand, and even in kind of commercial terms, you say this is a time for us to profit, and now it's the only time we have, and so to make the most of it is very important.
이나야 마음과 차시 매워 말해. 마음발에 차시 거르데 이나야 다들 카도다가 유른 거 대와 이나야 아니 저 최주투에 아니 디바 방투에 티체 아니 저 뒤주 통도만도 말은 저 유른 거 마대와잖아. 배나 동원을 저 정화 임바 이나야 아니 저바 매바 제도에 왔다 그러와 들이 정화 이나야 아니 저바 매바 토네 최팀의 전교요 같이 규정을 하바에나 모두의 최팀 투에지 다 차지도 거할때 왔다 들레지 차지 들레다 수바지.
So it's kind of, this is not condemning us to having no future or anything like that, of course, but what we're saying is that we have to bring the right attitude to our time, whatever time we have left. And so whether we have a long life, we need to make sure that that is a life spent accumulating virtue and eradicating negativity, and that even if we were to quickly die, if we have not long ahead of us, our attitude should not change. That we have the same opportunity to accumulate virtue and purify negativity. And so that would be to say, even if we knew that we were going to die today, that attitude should not change. You should be steadfast in using whatever time we have to establish the Dharma in our mind stream, to really purify as much as we can and accumulate virtue as much as we can.
다 니바 동행기에서 미지발에 좀세 지야메베서 람고발라 람고발레로 저 미지바 오서 미지바 니사 자왈레 아사 달라 미지 수이친 될라지다 녀타죠 되미 사와 매조나 지다 다이 대월 독자.
And so the second of these subheadings was that there is absolutely no reasoning behind or backing up the notion that I'm not fearful of suffering, and that also it is completely inappropriate to approach the path with a lazy attitude. And so here, verse number 59 says, "Who can grant me fearlessness? How can I be surely freed from this? If I shall inevitably become nothing, how can I relax and enjoy myself?"
리카체 드레스긴데 얘네 단다 시야들 얘기 매다르와 시야군들이나 지구가 매바데 미세요 수강이 거 지구가 연구마다 이것도 수가 제시하고 그래요 막 다가자 소소 드레 아니 로데세보다 단다 동네 충조질에 수고분도 단다 내 나자 충조질에 마스바 용되기도 와 아니 단다 수고 되고 있는데 아 치와를 시기 되어서 아 시기분도 그렇지 그래서 그딱 왜 그런 하고요 말와 땅문에 치와 정도 되네 암지기 결혼 니마 가시면도 대 모두 써도 그 남자 랑차래 되래 랑차래 다음에 제가 개와 치마 버저 동네 단지 아 세금부터 써 그 하고 그 매봐서 와 this several Tanda de Setila to me Chigonde, and come Monsieur Bacha, might give a chigua, and there's a Kawachima Pedala to me, you and might give a Monsieur, but you want to go. Tanda Majo was a Shigumoto, didn't Tagumoto Sagachi, but wouldn't you go to Nizu Bello? What that deep or Suyo, attended deep or Suyo, the letter Dala Chiwata, Digwe as a Jimmy Geshe, Mijiba, the sweet Jimba, Kanechua, the sweet Jimbares. What did it? That the that called most young Tanda young member inside and get a share with somebody, but when I did it, you need to be lower. That is a sweet Jim. That there was maybe as a Digwa Joala, Mabea ina, that the dig to me to Digwati, La Mabea, Changdab La Mabea, Digwata, and Chiwa Dele Chitang Yava Tajosata, or the Digwata, or that because of the Chiwa Dele as a Jitang Yava Tower to the condition tower you would have, Mijubia, Mijulasa, Mita, Shina, that the Mita and Shiba, and the Dermisa Meba Juna. Misa or Meba Juna, Digwa Majan, Dang, Digula Tap. Did she never chat to go that Digwa Majan at Digua? What are they required to Mamari? Takashega or the China Meba chat to the Koragi, because of the Deneji, because of the killing it in the Yocho, killing it, Ranga Samlo Samaremado, because I required to make it a Marwa. That is a Digwa Majan, Digulas, Digula. That she never Mijube, Taka, she never child. We can to the Mitubar. What I should never check me is a Mijua in repair. Jumze Yandag, Semi repair Talapana, she never check never Mijube, and a cheech Lelos, that culture, Lelucin Tegio, Tai, they were to the culture, Lelucin, because of they to do this, 2 million source. That the that then socially don't agree. And then I take your mother's medic so shabba, which.
So this is those who kind of like don't accept death, they say, well, I'll not die, die today, or in any case, I've no fear of death. I'll handle it fine. And this is the kind of statement of somebody who doesn't understand or hasn't really met or doesn't have any memory of dying. It's kind of like you're operating from a state of ignorance, not of valid reasoning here. And if you look into it even a little bit farther, it's really a case of, somebody who's as long as death hasn't arrived, they're not fearful of it. But if they even have a small suffering while alive, they can find that unbearable. And so one has to question their attitude, that if you can't stand even a small suffering in this life, then how are you going to handle the terror of death when the doctor says, yep, yeah, you're definitely going to die in a few days? Definitely terror is going to arise in the mind there. And that's something that we kind of are only in denial about if we say, we have no fear of death. It's just a matter of not knowing what that experience is going to be like, because you haven't met it. But the reality of the situation is that because you find so much of what happens in life unbearable, it's highly logical and valid to expect that you're going to be terrified at death, because that's the knowing the reality of the situation. So, from what we might claim, what we might think in our head can be extremely different to what the real situation is like. It can be very, very different. And likewise, it's saying here that, if we say that I have no fear of death or negativity, that we say, but who can grant you that sense of fearlessness? There's nobody who can do that for you. And it's very clear that if you don't purify negativities, then and you die, then there's no way you can have any, there's no definite liberation for you. That's very, very clear. And so the fact that death is inevitable, but also that we simply don't disappear after death. If that was the case, if you kind of okay, I'm completely nothing after death, then you might be able to work into a situation where you go, okay, yeah, well, I'm going to die. Nothing is going to happen anyway. But the fact of the matter is that we have the karma that we are tied to, in the sense that we have to kind of abide by the cause and effect relationship. So once we die, we don't just disappear. We're going to follow in the footsteps of our own karma, of what we have accumulated. And so it's really high time that we really deal with this essential kind of lazy attitude, and really kind of stop just this kind of like sitting lazily without doing anything about our situation. That's completely inappropriate. And so it's very, very important for us to follow the path of valid reasoning. And that will tell us that, on the one hand, we are illogical in our assumption that if we kind of like of thinking that we're going to be fearless when it comes to death, but also it's entirely inappropriate while we are still alive, because it just promotes this laziness.
Kemalambata and Mune regret tell Pamne and it's Nebanine and Casade Kemalamania di Kebachibuyorba. Mashiba was a Tetarella because a Tedela Mashima Moba Semele Shiba Yugudwa. Oh, that is Norsha, that is Norsha's Mangu Yugudwa. Was a Tonga Yugu Nesu Manguna Tede Yugudwa. And the Kawanga just the best that Shibuji Casade Takaja, Ting Sabukone and 지금 삼로다는 예반예 거지보다 갑도라 소소소 통마통이 깨져져 리모도와 걸 가서다 간제 지금 세메리 바소로 지금 바 좀제 지금 때문에 샤나면도 아니 소소 통마통 것이 통마통 제 다른 게 제대로 마통하다 캐말레 먼저 세메리 소소 또 내세 야제도 디티르도 와서서 하고 뭐 그거도 한번 뭐 그거도 아니 다 생각이 생각데 그 딜레팅 사바지 봐서 아니 그 딜레도 아니 지금 가서다 다 지금 셰베기 균다 된데가 토네 아니 다가네 지금 가서다 다 간자 지금 년련다 현지 지금 규율 조다 약고지 마시 뭐이나 아니 개와치만 어떻게 돼 가보시라고 봐 다 돼서 거서 지금 띵 사비 거네 아니 지금 참아리 배 조다니 심에 토네 아니 예반이 고제래도 저번 네번이 고치려도 왔다 데래서 고 지금 캐말레베 좀 써도 고 매바진 거지 말봐 왔다 데네 임바에서 왔다 데서 지금 당바 만노와 제네 당바 만노와 제데 개치 모르도 어때들
Yeah, there are those who don't accept future lives, and that here it's a case of really not recognizing the possibility. You know, instead of saying you can't make statements based on simply not knowing, and that we have found this out through many times in during the course of our lives, isn't it? That we have, when we have clarified our understanding with regard to a particular position that we held. We could see that, oh, I was mistaken in that regard. Now I have the information to kind of like lift that veil from my eyes, and I can see the correct attitude clearly. And so this has to be kept in mind with regard to all so-called facts that we adhere to, and here saying that when we have established something, a sense of conviction based on valid reasoning, then we often can see the incorrectness of our mistaken point of view. And so this is important, that we kind of see that we should think more deeply about all of that which we accept or don't accept, and kind of to gain that sense of, that there's kind of even what we can see and what we can't see or can't see, that is kind of partially hidden from us, that we can make inferences and so on based on valid reasoning. And so this is important. This try to clarify what we didn't know, and that for example, looking at the case of future lives and so on, that it's not simply a question of saying I accept or I don't accept future lives. And we have to be able to only come to a conclusion based on looking at the evidence and looking at the reasoning, and thereafter drawing our own conclusions. And so we establish the future lives based on the continuity of consciousness. So looking at the kind of the outline of the law of cause and effect, looking at the substantial causes and so on, and the cooperative conditions, and that the non-acceptance of future lives is not supported by the valid reasoning. And so this is and it's more supported when we look into it on the basis of analyzing the valid reasonings behind it. And so here it's important to kind of make our decisions only based on adequate analysis from our own side, and thereafter to try to make the unmistaken choices. And so it's often the case that we conflate the notion of non-existence with the notion of not finding, not discovering. And so that just because we don't discover something or find something doesn't necessarily mean that it is non-existent. So we have to be aware of that. And so, that it becomes this kind of saying of how our own negativities are made manifest to us, that they are real, that they are something that have a real kind of existence in a way. And that here, once we have that certainty, then we have also the impulse to do something about those negativities. The fourth main heading here is equivalent to the fourth opponent power, that of the power of turning away from repeating the fault. And this is dealt with in three headings. The first of which is refraining from now on, refraining from negativity from now on due to regret. And the second is confessing previous negativities. And third is through supplicating the teacher, or the guru, that we vow to turn away from fault, turn away from negativity. These are the three, yes.
담장 오저 오다든지 다 당불은 니잖아 다 디벌은 교배 친제 또 받들라 당불은 니잖아 되메베 디바 되메베서 디바 방바 되메베 다 디바 되메베 디바 방바 아니 인생 군도 디벌레 타베 탑라 배바 오저
And the first of these, that is the refraining from negativity from now on due to regret, is two subheadings. The first is abandoning pointless negativities, meaningless negativities, and the second is how we are really striving at a means to become liberated from negativity day and night.
단 되메베 디바 방와 당보다 되메베 디바 어서 되메베 디바 방와들 니잖아 롱죄라 이데 미루에 착바 미루와 자 라다 될땐 디바 사고여서 착바 미루와 자 아니 니라 가서 니소라 착바 미루바 오서 다 될때 디바 찍으면서 착바 미루와
And the first of these, that is to abandon pointless or meaningless negativities, has two verses to cover it. The first of these is looking at how inappropriate it is to have attachment to possessions and experiences that are so ethereal. And the second is how inappropriate it is to have attachment to our friends, etc.
다 롱줄라 때는 어서 그래서 롱줄라 어서 이데 미로에 착바 미리 봤대. 다 그죠. 어저다 되미베 디고 방와들 니잖아. 롱줄라 이데 미로에서 착바 미로와. 년년도 솔라 다 이데 미로에서 착바 미로와 다 집어지로 어떻게 다 당보들라 롱줄라 이데 미로에 착바 미리 봤더라. 다 미리 봐 자와니서 문제 용대 시벌레 달라 하고 지연나 다니 될라 문제네 라메카다 개와체스.
So the first of these then, how inappropriate it is to have attachment to that which is so ethereal or unreliable, our own experiences. So it says, what remains with me now from the terminated experiences of the past? But through my great attachment to them, I have been going against my spiritual master's advice.
다 원체 코아들어서 롱주 용화대 롱주 지점 중종是중로 이대 미루와 시발 줄라서 당 날 편제다 겨와 다 렌네다 렌제 거다 다 이제 코아들 롱주 그 롱주네 안 롱주 디글 배주다 롱주 대 용대 롱주 지점 중종 안 중화대 이대 미루와 시보다 이 지금은 저 가서다 이대 미루와 시gle 다 이때도 다들 지금 냐마 롱주 버라 냐마 거저 빼네 지게불라 소바 다가니절 하이 롱주라 소바 답변도 되베 하다 데델레 깨네 다 튕겨 빠도 매봐 야고 시우지 데데 요르데 이내요 다다 가야 되죠 말와 이도 데다 달라 닝보다 제베 롱주 하마 지요 다 데데 저 돈주도 지야 가야 요마서 중세장 매배 다니 닝보 매바 tel라 뭐바 현재 창내서 다 닝보 매바 때 인기라 다다에 네베 딜레 현재 딜레 창내 아니 저 가서다 가자 저 라메카다 겨와 제다 가자 저 딜레 창배 온게 아니 가서다 디바 나서바 산에 로제도 주비엘에 배춘 제대로 디바 제베 아니 교도 샤바오자
So here it's saying that in the past and while we were going around in cyclic existence, it's, this kind of like all our previous experiences in cyclic existence, all the experiences that we have had, that absolutely nothing of them remains. Whether we were a deity or a king, vast riches and so on, that all of that, those experiences have gone, that there's not even an essence left. And yet, for that which is so essenceless, due to our craving and attachment to all that which was essenceless, we have contravened the advice of our spiritual teachers, our gurus, and engaged in negativities and so on. And for that, I have profound regret. So the second of these then was how attachment to friends and so on is inappropriate. And this is verse number 61, which says, having departed from this life and from all my friends and relatives, if all alone I must go elsewhere, what is the use of making friends and enemies?
Tsering nye dala ja danya juda cedela chachana cedoge nye cemege dala juda do cemege cedoge da cemege nye la juda do batako na so yiden zani ne megen ji redo da di tendo da digwa namba na so ja san digwa ne so zo kedo ani nye de yiden kan yo mare whatever da tensa da sobe ce lu di dang de shin do nye dang ani she sa she nam jang 아니 다저 가서 예반매 받자 뻔해 ran 찍고 답변은 체디 우가서도 아니 란이 찍고 예반매배 쳐서 다 소소 레상에 온거 도고도 예반매배 예반매배 쳐 가시 랑완매버 도고고 얘나 다 자다 미자고 이게 지시중데 다 갈변그 지시중데스 아니 예시 라 차버 무릭소 샤바고체
And so this verse is kind of pointing out the kind of unreliable designation of friend, enemy, and so on, how it is changing, not just in the course of from life to life, but in this life alone. That somebody who is you're so close to in the past could be, mortal enemy now, and vice versa, even in much shorter time frames. That these kind of designations can change completely, and so we should not pay too much attention. So saying here at the end of our lifetime, it's not only our life or our body that we have to part from, but also friends and relatives. And we have to go on alone without any certainty. We need to powerlessly go to an unfixed abode from here on in. And so I'm saying real here, what is the point of having this attachments to those who we are friendly with and aversion to those we are unfriendly with? We have to kind of look at it as we have to be the one. We are the one who accumulated the karma, and therefore we have to follow the path of our karma, and they can't interfere with that. So what is the point of having these designations?
That is nyenda zashe go mari sungu yo marta yene nyenda zashe la chagyo yo mar chalwa dela tene ani chagdang lo ke ngores ani dela chane dela noba kina tangwa ke 지켜도 다 창당 걸 놓기 그래. 아니 될라 되는 녀바 봐도 매바 소 그래. 아니 그 때문에 요 말이야. 이대는 뭐 이거지도 왔어. 거두이네 녀이 봐 얘는 앞으로 내가 있어. 얘는 말이. 녀샤는 소소 류디야. 니마지 샤는 줘야도 와. 소소 롱주디에 샤는 줘야도 와. 그게 이대면도 와. 다 이대 유저의 가르스나 소소 개화지 사도나 띠무들은 냠도 소소가 다 지금 류기 dimnal리시 캔에 줘야도 와. 소소 가바토를 리기도 와. 그러면 소소 류디엘레 도움도 와. 뭐다 되는 뭐다 되는 바자 딜라 온게 다디 개침부스네 딜라 착바티 아니 rumbo di ne ke do sugu yore me to ya nyen go mare nyen la phama dugu mare de sugu mare nyen di chötbe tungel le beju tang go res chötbe gegel le beju tang yo mare sta na ngara zo ge da gegel le beju tang di ne go do sugu yore ba.
So here, of course, that this is not describing friends and relatives and so on as being unnecessary. Of course, we have our family, we have our friends, and that what is being criticized here is the debilitating attachment that we can have towards friends, and likewise those who we consider as enemies, that aversion. It's these attitudes of extreme extremes that we need to deal with. And it's very, very important that if we kind of just describe our relationship with another in terms of the attachment we have to them on the one hand or the aversion on the other, it's only going to be the cause of countless negativities accumulating between us. And so it's kind of saying that this is important. And it's pointing out too that the kind of ethereal nature of these relationships that we have, that a dear friend can't be a permanent, can't be one's dear friend forever. And that so it's kind of like and when they're gone, those experiences that we had with them are gone also. And so it's kind of saying here that if we are with somebody, initiating a good relationship with somebody out of a virtuous imprint, then we have to ensure that that kind of continues on, that we have the emphasis of that relationship in order to practice the Dharma. This is the most important priority we should have, and that it goes both, it goes for all the relationships that we have. That it's certainly not saying that we shouldn't have friends, we shouldn't have those who are close to us. That's very, very important. But we should eliminate the attachment element of that relationship and substitute that attachment for an adherence to or a dedication to the virtuous practice and the Dharma.
What the Yamaya Tarmabushi about it, Katana, Benasoso, Pama Pinja, Trobo, Tromo, near Jibana, or that's the Pugu, Takadim by Tilla, Chingarazi Yabu Cheko, the Chidan Toda, but Chetu, so Lelabo to the Chetu to Attila Yabu, so near Becum Chen. And the Yabu Che, Lelabo Yoba is that the Carson, oh, Toba Mabana Tinchi marking a Simjan, and Taring, yeah. The social leg on the social near chavar, Tomo chavar, Tomo chavar, Yana Pama chavar, Yana Pugu chavar. The name is that Tangela Pamba to another Kugab Jeres. And the Pamba to what Nachi, Simja Tamjala Maubala, yet dinner she took to a Juru shows. Yan Dana yet Pamba to what Sansing Pambare. In a Maubara yet, sugar Pamba took to a shows. What the Gaja should to be Gege Majabachi, should give a Tungela Doach. Nomo gave a Julamondo was no more Pambege and Tungela Trotova Jetova enough. And you call that should be Tunge Chawa.
And so many times I've emphasized this way before. How is it that we can and should relate to others, be it their parents or our children, our close friends, and so on? That it kind of like we have a natural tendency to want to help and be good in their company and towards them. It's something that is easy to do, but it's also to recognize that our relationship to them is one of facilitated by a karmic connection that we have had since the beginning of time, and that here the lesson to be learned is that we have to be as beneficial as we possibly can to this other because of the importance of this karmic connection. And that's here to be able to see it as an opportunity, a really golden opportunity for ourselves to really, in all of our actions towards those who we feel close to, who are important in our lives, that we, providing support and material benefit to them, that we also expand that out to kind of wanting to be able to transform that gift to the gift of Dharma. May it be that in future I'll be able to provide that to all sentient beings. And so making it this bodhicitta motivation. This is a very, very important point and a very convenient practice for us to be able to do.
What did the general? What did the general? 가서 년 된들 때는 심진 탐제 소소 년 소투에게 딜레 때는 심진 탐제 소소 년 소투에게 아니 줄을 배주 당도하자 디마도 디자다 년 예와체 소저 많이 맞지 디 아니 심진 다다 년 예되긴 디 레고 온 년 차디가 되게 아니 소소게 지금 잠바다 제와다 셰럽다 된들 때는 심진 탐제 소소 년 소투에게 줄을 배주 당도해 좋아 줄을 배주 다디 전에 대체도 아니 가서데 딱한제 착단 거 로마게라 팽기로 와 아니 갈리 전에 딱한제 저 가서데 저 사람게 도베스네 되게 괜찮은 사람게 도베스네 아니 저 사주 랑가 dim지주나 산제 고마도베 줄 제도바이나 아니 거다저 가서데 다 지금 최대 투매 년 차버려 봐 때문에 차단계에서 년체도 문제는 년레모도 다 차대도 와 그럴 때는 뒷바사기도 와 뒷바사는 소소 잘 와. 내기도 와.
So that the objective is that we should use this close relative, this friend with whom we already have a very healthy and positive relationship, as those who are representing all sentient beings, and to be able to train our mind to have to see all sentient beings in this positive light as friend. So they are the basis then for seeing all sentient beings as friend. This is really the training. They're a cause for us to be able to establish all sentient beings as a friend, and not to continue with this kind of precise distinguishing our friends and enemies and so on, this kind of discriminating attitude. And so it's really important for us to be able to see like that, and to kind of like see it as also training in our love and compassion and our wisdom, and that can be brought forward to apply to all sentient beings in all situations, and to really let go the attachment aversion nexus in our attitude, and see that as something gone and in the past, and that to really look towards developing the realizations on the paths and grounds in establishing at every moment the causes for enlightenment on the basis of this positive, beneficial sentient being in front of us. And so it's kind of saying this is the choice we have, because if not, there's every likelihood that they will be our enemy, in fact, because we will only create negativity in relation to that person. And as such, if it's only negativity that we accumulate in relation to somebody, they might as well be classified as an enemy for us. So that's the reality of the situation.
다들 인바이자 랑기 지가서데 다들 년 되게데 레기 저와처럼 년 찾아 되게데 심장 탐제 년도 주에가 다 practice grounds로 해. practice grounds로 어떤데 저게 아니 미유샤네 제도바이나 아니 배워요 봐.
So that's our objective, is that due to this karmic connection with this friend, the one we can see as friend, as close to us, that this is all our interactions with them are a training ground, a practice ground, then that says, to being able to see all sentient beings in that light, that they are friend, that they are close to us.
That's why and so 년 그래서 년야 패도를 increase 차도 그래서 로티의 년에 로체만 다 쳐도 이제 차도도 와 차도도 쇼게 년에 건다 다 쳤다 되네 많이 봐자 소소가 되건가 심장 탐제 년도 줘야겠다 아니 저거 그 가서다 다 저거 practice ground 소리 따도 봐이나 아니 거년 파조 가리사나 마사나 소소의 셈 되네 파조데 아니 년 무트데 네트에 요메 바 네트에 대 삐다다다다다 네트에 중으로 와 되네 다 increase 차도로 와 어떻게 중으로 와 왔다 되네 다 파조 만에 야 콜렉 온거 통수면 디고 개침뭐 말해 소소의 년게 삼로도 말아봤지 아니 무트데 도토 봤지 디 개침뭐 봐
And so with this practice of being able to not only see this particular individual as friend, as the one who is close, we are close to, but it becomes like the practice ground for seeing all sentient beings in that same light, has the twin effect of both increasing our friendship with that one, of increasing that sense of closeness with that one, and also being able to develop a perception of all sentient beings in a really stable way that is not easily changed or transformed, of seeing them all in a sense of closeness and friendship as well. And we can see that too, that this is counter active towards what is more commonly found, that when we have this kind of ambiguous attitude towards friends, that they may very soon not be friends at all. That the friend changes to an enemy over the course of a year, and in some cases over the course of a day. So the friend in the morning can be the enemy in the afternoon, and so this is kind of like counteracting that tendency as well, that we have that less of a fickle attitude towards our acquaintances, but more one of a stability and consistency, of seeing them all as a friend, as somebody who we're really close to, and that friendship, that perception of friendship is not easily lost.
What did it? Today is a Neshella Chapati and social Nugus, social Nugu is that Tangarazo Tandagi Tanyagi Yawa Chen, teacher, Tambutasha Chena, Tambutasha Chena, Rala Tungi, Juchita, Salmatado, Tinyan Chagoba, Rang Dacha de Dua. Tadianga was more trouble, Tadang was Samlo Tandang Tone. Chitan near Koran social Jamarite, in a social Samlo Tandang, Chitanga Tone, near the social Chacha. Because social new to good one. Think of the man or chet get somebody to one.
And so these verses also are pointing out that if we approach our relationships with others through attachment, clinging, that it can only lead to fault and suffering. And so, what we're making is not a friend, but an enemy. Because they are inspiring us to create negativities out of attachment, and therefore guarantee more suffering. And so we have to make sure that we're making a friend and not an enemy by eliminating the attachment element of our connection, and that we should make no mistake with regard to this.
What did it? Neshe la chaba miri so she was. That Niban yes, Neshe good Uncosa, Niva, and of course, Niva Ninsen good, Tigualias, a tower Pebanista. That Ninsen good, Tiguala tower Pebanista, Wale. Miguel Wale to Nejo, Telechita Netasha. Ninsen Tado Dagin, Dini Basha Sabe Richer.
So the second of that those subheadings was that we should really strive at the methods of liberating ourselves from negativity day and night. And the verse is verse number 62. How can I be surely freed from unwholesomeness, the source of misery? Continually, night and day, should I only consider this.
What did it? Takanja, Naranzo get Chishudi. Get Chishudi, Godu in a Geshe Sungo, the Geshe Garsana, and that Diba Migawati, and in Yendu Tungen Nam Jungasata, Diba Miga was singing data, so the Danashi then. Danashi, Dayima words in Chita, Diba Migawe, Le, and in the Zoo Karchik, so the Midu Tungen Yuguras, Tungen Nam Jungas. 동해 델레 지당이야바 타와 교르스다 동해 델레 냐바 타와도 그렇지 고도 교르시 닌제 따도 다 간제저 로다 닌제 따도 다기니 교와 미게베서 렌데 디니 바시 삼베 리버죠 오다 간제 소소 삼로 땅고도 오다 데데 Wapena Dona, Dona, Sana, Kata Jolam Namshi Sugura, Doa, Doa, Sawa, Nyewa. Jolam Kadesh Kala Yuba Yina Yam, what a so dry digmatic Karsana, Tipa Miki, Lady, but water bachet. And Dile Tawa, the Kadesh Cheguto, Ninzem Kudo, some like Ketchita and Tirias.
So this verse is saying that really what is of key importance, what it boils down to really, is that we need to employ our mindfulness and alertness in being able to recognize negativity for what it is, and to really see it as the true enemy. And that because it is only going to produce undesirable suffering for us. We have to really recognize that clearly. And therefore, it's saying here that the negativity that arises from non-virtue, negative karma, can lead us to the suffering of the lower realms, and that this suffering, then how is it that we can definitely get liberation from that? I have to take it seriously that day and night, and need to reflect on this process of the karmic path of virtue and non-virtue, and to kind of see what I need to practice and what I need to totally give up. And so it is kind of whether we're moving, whether we're sitting, whether we're eating, whether we're resting, that we have to see that the non-virtuous negativity as a true unchanging enemy for us, and to be able to see how we can completely uproot that and dedicate ourselves to the opposite of that, the virtue of the merit of virtue, or the positivity of virtue.
아니 데네 임바자 미게어도 뭐트 베토네 아니 가서 Geshe 바유 때네 로아더니 로아다 가서 Geshe 바유 때네다 아니 다가네 시 what 전에 아니 미게와도 아니 뭐트 바체 뭐트네 아니 미게와 아니 끼어도네 고조도네 뭐트 바체네 아니 미게와 마게야 타체 그데 끼바이네 아니 귤뭐 먹어 와체네 고 까토 바체 what 가투바체 아니 딜라데다 녀바체 사바체 중앙 이바이나 티 모트베토네 아니 샥돔지에 데 귤보 마조코네 샥돔제 투바치에 어디데자 따디데잖아다 제바이나다 데네 데도 조예기다 가서데 고주옹구르와
So really, this is at the very beginning of true practice, of serious conscientious practice, that we employ these mental factors of mindfulness and alertness to really to recognize that our suffering, the negativity of non-virtue is suffering. It leads to suffering, and that so we ask, what is it that lays down the causes of this suffering? And it's attachment, aversion, and ignorance, the three poisonous attitudes. And we have to actually then, how do these arise in the mind? How do these negative motivations arise in the mind? And we can't, we have to kind of move away from just being unaware of their presence in the mind, of not knowing of what they're in mind, and to kind of become aware very, very quickly of when this kind of attachment, aversion, and so on arises in the mind, and be attentive to it. And when we can, try to deal with it as it arises, or if it has already arisen, ensure that it doesn't remain. These mental attitudes don't remain in the mind long, and we put a stop to them. And that and recognize also that if if a negativity has accrued due to the arising of these negative attitudes, these negative motivations, that we engage in the process of confession and purification as quickly as possible. And also in the recognition, of course, that we have a store of such negative imprints on our mind that need this process of confession and purification also. And that this is really, the beginning of sincere conscientious practice.
어디를 다들 인사 로레 다 근데 낭도 리바스게 낭도 리바스게 어디를 냠내 제단데 다 간제 삼루게 내세게 삼루게 토네 나 삼루게 토네 다 간제 가서래 가서래 다 간제 게미게 조단 근데 임바데 아니 미게고 너고요바데 아니 가서데 모토베 토네 미게와 마사데 미게와 마사데 미게와 가리가리 임바데 모토바치 아니 게모드네 게 고수바데 모토바치는 마게 주에 그때 게바네 규르부 마고 와데네 바다 가투에 안 디톨 사베게 레냐바 사드바나 디 규르부 마고바 샥돔지에 어디를 전 다가제 내 남주 제모다 잘 셰드고요. 가서 뭐저 강부스의 피지컬 강부스, 다 멘탈 강부스. 와 다되게 소소라 지금 동에 마용화 소트에 아니 동에 각도 동에 그 규티게 코드는 그 출로네 동에 그 규트에 뭐 준낭로는 용되고 되게 그 워터 받잖아요. 감도 까도 받지에 어디를 지금 나가자 저
And so this is all about the validity of an inner understanding, being able to have this flexibility of mind to deal with this inside. And so we kind of like here, we are really very, very precise in our designation of what is virtue, what is non-virtue. We clearly understand that non-virtue is harmful. We see the harmfulness of it. We are conscientious, or we're proactive in not allowing such non-virtue to arise in the mind. We are very efficient when it does arise, doing something about it. We don't, we apply the antidote, or we don't allow it to abide in the mind for long. And also, as soon as we're aware that some negativity has been accumulated, we engage in a confession and purification. So we become very professional with it. And Dennis often refer to this as kung fu, but not the normal kung fu that we know of, but a mental kung fu, that internally you are devastating towards your own non-virtue and negativity. And you understand this is not something that is demonstrated externally, but it happens, it's an inside job, as it were.
다 니바 나제 샤발라 니체 나제바 다 지바 사차바 되게 마샤나 아니 데부지마 니바레 데네사 샤네 다바데 아니 다 딕발라 지다 윤네 요마르데 이네 딕바 사차네 샤네 다주여바데 다 딕베 윤데레 딕베 윤데 수구도가 다 니바 나제 샤발라 니체 아니 샤제 오부 다 샤베 추 제 니체.
And so the second of these then is purify or confessing previously accumulated negativities. This has two subsections. One is the actual object of our confession, and secondly, how we engage in that confession, and pointing out that that negativities on their own don't really have a quality. The only quality that can be spoken of is that at least they can be purified.
어디 다 당고들 다가서 샤정 뭐고들라 자월려서 다니 미시 데모베 라신 칸나 마토함 제베 디바 가이바 가야로와 기바너.
And so verse 63 says, whatever has been done by me through ignorance and unknowing, be it the breaking of a vow or a deed by nature wrong.
란제 랑도 미시베서 데모베서 제베 대징 이미 수중 제자다 소소그 도마 켈레나 말레나 수제바 이네 디바조와 그다 라제 칸나 마토베 디바조라 페나 소조바 아니 미상와 줘봐 다 간제 지금 가서데 다 간제 미상와 줘봐 다我说这个是主他妈大概的结巴呢你把用掉的去看来没给这样嘛谁结巴的你把用的个说的让先看到嘛多少那结巴看到嘛那是的但等的你把有把通呢俺当然说几个面是看来结巴的呢俺大的俺的结巴的给说结巴看到嘛对吧你把是是吧大概这我的大概这个我等的说等的人家税节个是税节讲地瓜局让先看到嘛多啊这边店家大概这个东北开联的，大概开联的，他几个面是当家说，这边，可是他看到码头啊，这边店家看到码头，我记得那哇，这边地方看一吧，两，叫我你把看呀，让我给我那说什么的，叫我你把看呀，让我他没给主播了，说他这个的，我他看呀，让我说些吧，我讲，
And so this verse it talks about that through my own not knowing what it is I should take up and what it is I should leave aside, and then compounded by ignorance, I have contravened some vows that I have taken on, or engaged in deeds by nature wrong. Not necessarily the breaking of a vow. And so this distinguishes both of these are negative. So maybe that I don't accept any set of vows, but such as killing and lying and so on. These are deeds by nature wrong, and so they accrue a negative imprint. But also then whatever I have accepted a commitment towards, like a vow, if I contravene that is compounding that negativity also. And so here, whatever it is that I have engaged in, or that lay down the negative karma, it's confessing all of these.
我的这，但你把下边吹年色早晚来，光没有见过我送多，他家东来几sem机，样多差在那跌打他就下不去讲，
And the second of these subheadings then was the how to confess these negativities. Verse 64. I humbly confess it all in the presence of the protectors, with folded hands, prostrating myself again and again, my mind terrified by the misery to come.
我的这种，我的，但叫我写的这边，我的确据叫我写的这边是这边，我公没见过是，我送多少，那你听不讲的到，地这东来了，这边这部，但地方山地这部东来了这边是，甚至他定了这些不讲的话，这个什么当家呢？这边甚至样都差钱的的，是样都差钱的，地方跌的。他们这下不给我是，但下不给我写吧，我是，
So here saying that in front of these protectors, the conquerors and their children, the Buddhas, that I directly in front, with hands folded, and also aware of the consequences of the negativities on my own mind spring, bringing forth a sense of fear and terror. I again and again prostrate and confess all of these negativities.
我的这我这，他说吧，看不说了，你把那多呗，当家完的，他看不说呢，我当家完的早完了，这帮男的大几的，弄把老把送都是，这呢，上不嘛那边，连着打的要没给，
And then the third of these headings, that through supplicating the masters, I vow or promise to turn away from these faults. Verse number 65 says, I beseech all the guides of the world to please accept my negativities and wrongs, since these are not good. In future, I shall do them no more.
다 점바 라나메바 아니 초주의 개와 세다 제와 남제 아니 다지 딕바다 소소고 사셔베 딕바 기반남 농발라버서다 노드 친샤스 손도소서다 손도소서 제타 잡도소서다 나 딕바 기바데네 자와 상보 말라베다 디가도 노드 친부 친샤베 다 가서도 레상보자 자원이나 레모도스 말라베 렌체 다니스다 소소다 다니 손도 아니 소라 바브나야 소소 소다 제발로고 존에 봐 소르 땅 이스 디발레 용소 미기도 샤바오스 담자야죠.
And so here it is a supplication to the king of guides, the conqueror, the Buddhas and their children, that all of them, I really am fully aware of these negativities and all of my errors, mistakes, and please accept them all my negativities and wrongs, and that all of these negativities now I am so fully aware that there was nothing good about them. That it's very obvious, very clear to me now, and so therefore from now on, even at the cost of my life, I will avoid these negativities, and I will not shall do them no more.
다 이제 딕바샤의 톱시의 땡게 톱 순집에 톱 네발레 라도베 톱 네보 군드 집에 톱스 다 톱시 수고도 와 톱시데 야고 시바체네 아니 소소 딕바샤베 갈라 아니 톱시 토네 아니 강투도 그 샥tum 제트 어때죠.
And so then it's just simply saying that I will apply all four of the four opponent powers, the power of the basis, the power of always applying the antidote, the power of turning away from any these faults in the future, and the power of regret, of really how to say, exposing all my own negativities and regretting them.
다 땡게 톱들라 잠주다 셈제 치야차 아니 순집에 톱들라 아니 지금 딕바사 사바디게데 아니 ngocho 바처럼 코바나 두치만에 예전에 교산의 제목은 딱딱 제주라.
And the power of basis is simply going for refuge in bodhicitta. The power of really of recognizing one's own negative states and regretting them is to really recognize them in the kind of context that they are like poison in my system, and that I need to quickly, immediately do something about them to eradicate that danger.
다 네발레 라토바다 달레촌데 다 네바데 지기메스게 디슈디 개치주지와.
And then the power of promising really that one will avoid turn away from fault in the future is kind of at the level of a vow, of really being very powerful about that, and it's one of the most important of the four opponent powers.
다 네모 군데 주베 톱데 다 가자 딕바 다외 쳐도 다 가자 저기 가서도 다 가자 저기 다 저기 차세에 안 다가네 생기지 있게되래 다 근데 저기 딕바 다외 쳐도 제죠 봐 어디래.
And so then the power of always applying the antidotes is being able to engage in indeed any virtuous practice, be it prostrations or refuge in itself, but with the purpose of purifying one's negativities.
다 가자 저 다 가자 랍드네 소했잖아 아니 셰친 거 돌로에 아니 딕베 코솜 딕바 사게 소소 딕바 아니 다 그다 술을 내봐게라 되지 아니 내봐게가 소소 잡아가 다 가자 저 코솜이 뭐 라식 매바 다예 미미 바다에 아니 이자도에 아니 사제의 구수샤에 아니 가서 쳐봐 피해라서 뭐 다 간제 가이나면은 지금 가서도 딕바 다외 쳐도 다 겨와 그래 주바 이바이나요 아니 지금 한도도 다 똥반이 거면 자주가 쌤 거면도 다 개취시래 어디죠.
And so this can be, that the kind of purifying negativities in the context of the three spheres of recognizing towards whom we have accumulated that negativity, the kind of negativity, etc. Of also purifying negativities through making offerings, through reciting the 100 syllable mantra, through the erecting of Buddha statues and publishing Buddhist texts, etc. Indeed, in short, any virtuous activity that we engage in can be turned towards the purification of our negativities. And most important of them all is to meditate on emptiness and get to understand emptiness and the mind of enlightenment. And then the final outline in this chapter is the name of this chapter, saying this is the name of this chapter is the confession of negativities within the overall text known as the Bodhisattva's way of life.
다 남주 내신 전에 아니 düğünde lama tuya ong부터 랑게 지와 빼마도 님에 대해 삼다 아니 받자와 라마로 다게 지와 그래 구수도 용어도 저도서 라마 tuya ong부 전단 아 랑게 지와 내서 어떤 산제 과마도 거대 제 소소서 가고.
And so then as we normally do, we begin the dissolution by establishing the lotus sun and moon disk mandala seat on our own crown and making the invocation verse, glorious and precious Lord Guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed here at my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. Thrice. At the end of the first recitation of that verse, the figure moves from the space in front. At the end of the second, has arrived at the pre-prepared seat, and at the end of the third, they are established until we ourselves attain enlightenment, and we rejoice in that fact. And then we offer the 7-limbed practice along with mandala. And then we establish the lotus, sun, and moon disk mandala seat at our own heart center. And again, utter the invocation verse, O glorious and precious Lord Guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed here at my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. And at the end of the first, the figure moves from the crown down through the central channel. At the end of the second, arrives at our pre-prepared seat. And at the end of the third, we have a similar understanding that they will remain until we attain the state of enlightenment. And then the sum quarter what any uso rangi ningu uso lama tuya never de kusum pula se padu never to the rangi one country pala se tola tena and it rangi tomamena de weather to watch that jeba kanama the ranshi kana but never condition saw you by that and tane soda ga tomata ga jaju sem lawa da sanga da sita kawala soa but never condition saw you by na data tamjada and lagane jo 가서 란체 단지 머리가 바자다 저 앞에 장시 다서 나도도 아니 랑게 루기 동네 루기 나자라 소바 셈게 동네라 소바 다가네 저 조직 코만요 자롱 틸레 교 근데 저 장시 다마 중소서 아니 와다 야고시 중소서 다다 타메가 나셔 군단 가나다자 다보람 저 바시 차도 중소서 어들 공부시. And then we see that the petals of the lotus fold over, enfolding the figure, and they are sealed with the white five-pronged vajra at their tips. Then they are surrounded by the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha going in a clockwise direction, the mantra of Manjushri in an anti-clockwise direction, and the mantra of dependent origination in a clockwise direction. After which, then light rays emanate from the central figure within the petals, permeating every atom of our bodies from the crown to the soles of the feet, and that engage in purification of all negativities and obscurations that we've accumulated since the beginning of this time, and all negativities that have been, say, a deed by nature wrong, or the breaking of a vow, all negativities associated with the self-cherishing and self-grasping, along with the imprints of those attitudes, they're purified also. All negativity of body, speech, and mind that we have accumulated, all imbalances in our channels, winds, drops, and elements. And in particular, we have clarified that the mistaken ordinary view, and that's replaced by the pure view of being able to see everything in that way. And that all of this then is completely and utterly purified.
다 랑 신도터 롱디 년랭이 전에 라마샤자스가 고대 렌지 지금 전에 소소류의 라마샤자스가 꿀을 주수 섬자 다 소소 신도터 샘데 년랭 라마샤자스가 투데 렌지 지금 전에 소소 샘데 라마샤자 되게 생기가 투라 주수 랑게 룽아 주수 라마샤자스 구소 뭐 예면의 주수 섬사자 아니 내데 다터네 내 견탄데 단 라마샤자스 생기가 아니 가서 답에 시도 주수 라마샤자스가 구소도 뭐 예면의 주 두갈에 왜서 빠도 매버 심지가 장단에 왜서 줘발을 때는 심지가 대다 탄저가 왜서 대다 슈발을 때는 대다 탄저가 다 간제 저 라마샤자스 구조도 뭐 예매 줘서 내 대다 탄저자 아니 라마샤자스 그게는 답에 시도 줘서 썼었죠 아니 근데 심지가 탄저 라마샤자스 구조도 뭐 예매 줘와 아니 뒤에도 수수의 개와 가를 두바 있나 근데 누가 소소도 저거 유대는 뭐 저거 똑같이 파다 점에서 뒤 대화때 대외 동반에 대도 있으면 이 계속 선생님 공부하셔
Then through the combination of my own most subtle wind acting as the substantial cause, together with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, and my own body transforms into the enlightened body of the Buddha. And through the combination of my own most subtle mind acting as the substantial cause, with the mind of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is transformed into the enlightened mind of a Buddha. And then I automatically see my own body, speech, and mind as being indivisible from that of the body, speech, and mind of a Buddha. And that I see the place in which I am also is transformed from its ordinary state into the pure realm. And then I sent out light rays from my own heart center, equal in number to all the sentient beings in all the 6 realms of existence. And upon dissolving into them, their whole body, speech, and mind is also transformed so that their body, speech, and mind becomes indivisible from the body, speech, and mind of an enlightened being. The place they are in is also transformed from the false and ordinary state into a pure realm. And that I consider then how wonderful this is, and on this day, this time, I have attained the goal of bringing all sentient beings to enlightenment. I consider that all of these sentient beings and all the virtue that has led them to the state, and myself as the agent of this virtue, are completely lacking in any objective existence and merely imputed by thought. This reflection leads to voidness, which combines with emptiness, a bliss, and that I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness.
我你们这里当什么叫他们这那三这个啥了过多，大家会说是考考，当我把以前上了，我那在这里来了考个月，因为当然小概我是这三了当嘛的，牛都在那就用那个牛你都就那个，那就了就说的推荐啥改变的这位，就了就说什么这
And of course, today I can be very content and enjoy and rejoice in the fact of leading all sentient beings to that state of enlightenment. But also I'm aware that this is only happening at the level of imagination, of my own powers of visualization. And yet I see it as an important imprint, and I dedicate with that sincerity that may it lead to my being able to quickly make this manifest for real.
我到等这个什么他们这三这个三了过把了，然后三这个三马头呢，他们是要嘛的，对不对？然后三这个三马头个把头什么看到没？我把人家把其他我去看懂嘛，对了，对了，看多多嘛的，对的是嘛中了。那现在三这个马头，对头完了，讲究个什么，当年都被写了嘛的呢，他们来嘛的。等这因为因啥他这个他看的高个的是呢，他让给这个告诉的，就告诉那当跟着去插吧，呢，上海跟着去吧，呢，他。 동해 중만에 되게 좋은 나와 있나다 타마 시바 있네 되게 근데 좋아 캔 근데 쳐봐 있네 대다 담자 잔주 그서다 돈이 또왜 셰라게게 아니 걔도 좋아 튕겨도 좋아지 다 좋아지 영화 쇼스 는 뭐지 아니 랑게 강투도 그 배준제나 아니 르물 마도 봐 And that is due to 20 again the Tawa Junguru, you are short.
To reflect, I really have to attain that state of enlightenment. It's only from that state that I can be fully aware of the kind of dispositions, the timing, the karma, and so on of all individual sentient beings in order to be able to benefit them in the best way possible. And so, therefore, I must establish the causes to attain that state of enlightenment. And that means developing the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom of selflessness. These are absolutely vital. So I must be able to attain these states. That means that I'm able to transform every situation that I am in, whether positive or negative, and to whether I'm sick or even on the verge of death, that I can see that all I can use these situations for is to establish the causes to further my mind of enlightenment and my wisdom realizing emptiness, and that may I be able to fulfill these collections as quickly as possible and dedicate in this way, dedicate myself to making my best effort to be mindful of every situation and to use all of these situations to further the causes to establish these minds.
Kasala ngado le dangbo yin sabe chala ane twenje nyunyo re ane gegen mangbo re tende yin ba za gegen twenje je somato wana ane ngozo tapshi yo mare ta gegen twenje je soto ba yina ane ganga twenje chado kurwa ro gegen ina da twenje ta 상해 근데지만 네가 튕겨라 저 소투에게 아니 소에 요래 소에 요바도 먼저 소투바 지기이나 아니 먼저 개개 매어래 아니 들을 때는 딱 감각 튕겨 차도 그래 네 차와이나 아니 링부르 뭐도 와 아니 랑게 심도 봐 정거로 와 왔다 때내 요는 먼저 배줘 맞아 랑가 니바지 요 말에 랑가 니바지 매사도 때내 제도와 이나 딱 가서 땡도 있게면서 포피트 왔다 오늘 전에 포피트 정거로 와 왔다 때내 저 배줘 제거다 what did it what did it
And so, of course, as beginners, we are painfully aware that we seem to have few conducive conditions that will inspire our practice and many obstacles and distractions to our practice. But it's all of what we have to do. We have to really transform and to make the strong effort to change all conditions into conducive conditions for ourselves. It's very, very important to try and do that. The more conducive conditions we recognize and can utilize, the less obstacles there will be to our being able to practice in this continuous way, in this consistent way. And so it's very, very important that we reach a situation where we see nothing as an obstacle to ourselves. And that means that we have been truly embedded into the path. And that is so important for us. And when, we can make our all conditions conducive conditions for ourselves. And this is the way towards perfection, of reaching that state of perfection. And we can fully support this with additional aspirational prayers aimed at that goal.
Then win-win win-win.
So then we have a win-win situation.
What is it? ma ke pa nama ke yo ke pa ya ba me ba go do Purify, show Karya Kove Shimkande, Penande, Abalu Jovene, Jerya Sewa, Tenzen Yazoye, Shabira Sita Bando, Tenjoro, Meoy, meoy,
You are Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of compassion, not ended to existence, and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception. Sankapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows, goes on Japa at your feet and pay respects.
That's all.